on the creature called man. It's because it's dedicated to my favorite author, G.K. Chesterton. And this quote is appropriate for this meeting. Mankind itself seems to grow more remarkable when we compare it with the common life of nature. Okay, so we'll start with the end in mind. So whenever we start something, we must keep the end in mind. So where are we going with this? Okay. So we'll ask the question first: what is our ultimate destination? What is our final goal in life? And if you see that anything that you do, right, and if you ask yourself, why am I doing this? It may lead to another action. So why am I driving? Because I need to go somewhere. And why am I going there? To get something. And why am I getting something? So ultimately, the question ultimately will always end with something. It'll end with because it makes me happy. Okay. So this the ancient philosophers found that this was the ultimate thing that we all are going towards. So anything we do, ultimately, if we analyze it, we see that the ultimate goal is happiness. And the catechism, the Penny Catechism, would rephrase it in another way, saying that why did God make you? God made me to know Him, to love Him, and to serve Him in this world, and to be happy with Him in the next. So yes, our ultimate goal is happiness. Okay, so our goal is happiness, and to achieve this happiness, the true happiness, which is God, we need to know a little bit about the equipment that we have to reach this journey. So just as a hiker needs to know how to use his equipment, we also need to know the equipment that we have, our faculties, the human equipment that we have. Okay, so and this presentation is just an attempt to show us what are the faculties that man has, and later maybe we can discuss about how to use that and all. But right now is just to see what are the faculties we have. Okay, so we are going to deal with the capabilities of man, his limitations, and his place in creation. Okay.
Anna, just one to interrupt you. I think we should mention that people should pin the screen if they want to see it full screen.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. So like Ron just said, pin your this presentation to make it full screen so that you can see it.
Yeah, if you click on the screen, you'll have 3 dots. That should give you a drop down menu. Is that how it is done? I'm not sure. Since I've already pinned it, I'm not sure. Maybe those 3 dots should give you the option for pinning the screen.
Okay.
And then you should be able to view the screen in full.
Yeah. Okay. So if anybody wants to see it full screen, please pin it. Okay. You can read the slides better that way. Okay. So I won't go into too much of details of origin and this atheistic arguments about evolution and how things just came about. Because like Chesterton says again, see, we really can't explain how nothing could turn into something. Okay. So no scientist, no great philosopher also can explain how nothing can turn into something. So it's more logical to just say in the beginning, God created heaven and earth. Okay, so I'll take this as assumed. So we'll start with creation. So we'll just take for the moment only the visible creation. That's what we can see. So in creation, there are lots of things, like you can see in this slide, there are a lot of things, including us humans. And our goal is to find our place in it, but by comparing it with the other creatures. Okay, so first we'll go to this thing between living and non-living things. Okay, So you can see in the slide there are living things and non-living things. And living things have these few properties. Okay, so that one is natural origin. That means they come into existence by vital generation. That means vital means life. So they come into existence from another life. Okay, so a seed comes from another living creature, a plant. A baby comes from another living creature, its parent. And also this offspring has the same nature as the parent. Okay, an apple tree will produce apple trees. Dogs will produce dogs. Okay, non-living things like a block of granite will not generate another block of granite like itself. It can be broken into pieces, but it cannot generate another piece of stone. Okay, so you see that one of the errors of spontaneous generation, people used to think that life came about from non-living things. Okay, in olden days, they used to think that mice came from some moldy stuff, moldy wheat, and all that. Nowadays, also people think that life just came from the ancient soup, primeval soup. So it's the same thing. So, but we hold that living things can come only from a previous living thing. Okay. The other property is that living things have growth and decline. So they begin with a cell and they grow by nutrition. So they take up things from outside their own body, and they make this outside external thing into part of their own body. So I eat a cake, it's a non-living thing, and I convert the cake into a substance of my own body. Okay, so that's nutrition. So we take in things from outside and make it part of ourselves, nutrition. And the third, and also they have decline and death. Okay, so ultimately, all living things will one day, even if there's nothing wrong with them, will ultimately grow old and die. Okay, so they can only maintain their perfection for a limited period of time. Okay, even though they have food, they have the perfect conditions, they will only live for a certain amount of time. Okay, but non-living things will continue indefinitely. A stone will remain a stone if undisturbed. If you leave the stone in vacuum with no disturbance, it will remain a stone forever. Okay, not so with living things. Okay, so growth and decline. And the other thing, important thing is structure and function. Okay, so all living things have a structure. So they have a cellular structure. They all are composed of cells. Okay, whereas non-living things, they're not made up of cells. And these cells are organized into things called organs. Okay, organs are a group of cells, group of tissues that have a certain function. Okay, so they are special parts. Organs are special parts which have a special function, like a root, a flower, or the leaf, or the ear, or the nose. Okay, it is for different functions, and they all work together towards for the ultimate good of the whole living thing. Okay, for the whole body as a whole. But a non-living thing doesn't have organs. Okay, and they may have parts. Like my printer has parts. Okay, it has buttons. It has some printing ink can. It has parts, but they work individually by themselves. Okay, they don't work for the common good. Okay, so these are differences between the living and non-living things. So here are all the creatures, and we can divide them into living and non-living things. So we leave the non-living things aside for the moment and focus on the living things. So the living things, among the living things, there are 3 degrees of life. Okay, so this vegetative life, the sensitive life, and the intellectual life. So, so we can divide this, vegetative life at the bottom. So plants, sensitive life, that means those animals which have senses, and intellectual life, that is humans. Of all the visible creatures, humans have intellectual life. Okay, so we'll focus on vegetative life briefly for now. Okay, so vegetative life. So vegetative life has material organs. It assumes into itself material food and converts it into its own substance. Like I said earlier, nutrition. So why do I say material organ? Okay, so later we will see that intellectual life doesn't need a material organ. Okay, doesn't need material organs. Why do I say material food assumes material food into itself? Later we'll see that sensitive lives, they don't need, they can take in things which are immaterial. Okay, but vegetative life has material organs, roots, leaf, stem, etc. It assumes into itself material food. So if there is food near its roots, it will absorb it. Okay, if there's water, it will absorb the water into itself and make it its own substance. Okay. Now, this is different from sensitive life. So sensitive life also has material organs. Okay, so they have nose, ears, they have legs, tail, and all that. But they can sense things and they can assume into themselves images. So a dog can see something. Okay, it can see, let's say it can see a tree, and it can assume the tree into itself like an image. It takes in the image of a tree. Okay, so this is called sensation. Okay, so it takes in something from outside itself, immaterial things, image of the thing into itself. This is called sensation, sense perception. And for animals, this is limited only to material things. Okay, so animals, what they see, what they can smell, what they can hear, they can take into themselves. Okay, so this is perception, sense perception. Okay, now because they have the sense perceptions, okay, they can sense things outside themselves, they have an appropriate power of motion. So they have a power to react to these things that they see outside themselves, see or hear outside themselves. So they sense outside themselves and they can react to this. Okay, so this this reaction is like in the form of motion. Okay, and it either goes towards the thing or away from it. Okay. So like I just said, this assumption into itself of images of external things is called sensation. All animals have at least one sense. So the higher animals like chimpanzees and gorillas, they have all the five senses just like us. Okay. So lower animals, they may not have the sense of sight, but they may have a sense of touch. They may have a sense of smell. But they all have at least one sense. So that's what distinguishes them from a plant. A plant cannot sense outside itself, things outside itself. So this image that is formed inside the animal of the thing that is outside the animal is called a phantasm. Okay, so this is a term that we use, the scholars, the philosophers used. It's called a phantasm. This is the image. So we just call it image that is formed inside the animal. And this image is true to the object that is producing this, that is sensed. So if a dog sees a tree, the image that is produced in the dog's mind is true to what the tree is. Okay. If it smells something, if it smells something like rotten fish, that means there is rotten fish outside that is really there. Okay. The smell at least is there. Even if the fish is not there, the smell is at least there. Okay. So this is called a phantasm. So why we don't call it an image is because image is usually used for vision. The image is used for the phantasm that is produced by the sense of vision. But what do you call something that is produced by the ear? The ear also perceives some sound, but it doesn't form an image, right? It forms, but you know what it is. So that is the phantasm. So that's why it's called a phantasm, not an image. Okay, so sensitive life, these animals also have some other powers. Okay, like they have the power of imagination, so that they can form a phantasm of the sensible objects that they perceive. Okay, humans, we can imagine things which we have never seen also, but animals can only imagine things that they have perceived. Okay, so when the dog hears the master, it can master behind the door. It can form an image of the master behind the door. If it hears a mouse running under the behind the wall, it can form an image. That's why it reacts in such a way. So it can form an image. So this is imagination. So for animals, the imagination is limited to only sensible things, so which they have already perceived. Okay. Animals also are capable of memory, sense memory only. Okay, so not like us, but they have a sense memory. That means their uh, their life can represent an object that has been formerly seen, perceived, or formerly heard. Okay, so it can recognize that. It can remember that, recall to it itself. And the brain, the mind also will tell it that this is not something that is happening now, but it has happened in the past. Okay, so these animals can also have the sense memory. Okay, because the animals can sense things outside themselves, they react to these. So I told you, right? They react to this, and these reactions, like in the power, like we said, it is motion, right? They move towards it or away from it. So, in a broader sense, this is called an appetite. An appetite is anything that draws the subject towards itself. Okay, so subject somewhere, not towards itself, somewhere. So, an appetite. So, I have an appetite for food, so I'm drawn towards food. Okay, so this is in particular, we use it generally in terms of food and right appetite, but in philosophy, appetite is anything that moves. Okay, so sense appetites. So if a dog hears a loud cracker, it moves away from it. If it hears the master's voice, it moves towards it. Okay, so this is the power of this faculty is called the appetite, sense appetite. Okay, now these appetites are called blind. Okay, so they always move towards a sensible good and away from a sensible evil. So appetites cannot judge whether something is good or not, but the senses can judge. So the senses will say this is a good thing. So the appetite will move if the senses say it's a good thing. If the senses say it's a bad thing, it moves away from it. Okay. So the appetite itself does not apprehend the good. Okay. Uh, so animals have this appetite. So the ancient scholars had also called this something called natural appetite. We won't go into that much. Like it's like what a thing does. Like a stone will naturally tend to fall down if not stopped, right? So it moves towards the ground. So this is a natural. They used to call this natural appetite, but when we speak, we will use appetite only for living things. Okay. So this is about appetite. So in this session, we just need to remember two things. I mean, other things also, but two important things. One is what is a phantasm? Phantasm is the image that is produced by the senses. And what is an appetite? An appetite is the reaction that is produced by the capacity to sense. Okay. So these two things we need to remember before we close this session. Okay, this is a short session. In the next session, we will go a little more into these things of senses, internal senses. We will see what are the external senses. External senses, no, sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch, external senses. But we'll also see what is internal senses. Okay, so we'll see what is an internal. We will go through what is memory, a little more detail, what is imagination, and what is the power of estimation, which animals also have the power of estimation. So a dog will know that it can reach something. It doesn't chase aeroplanes, but it can chase cars. Okay, because it knows it will never reach the aeroplane. So that is estimation. So we'll go a little more into detail about that. We'll also go into a little more detail about the appetites, sensitive appetites. The sensitive appetites are also called irrational appetites because they don't use reason. They're just based on the senses. So we'll go into the sensitive appetites. We'll divide them into concupiscible and irascible appetites, and we'll go into details of that. Okay. So we'll end the session here. If you have any questions, you can ask me. And y'all can. These are the references that I've used. These are available. I think some of them are available as soft copies. I think all of them. Yeah.